princess in the veil, no one had ever seen her face. Not the guards, not her servants, not even her suitors. Princess Virelia of Lareva wore a silver veil from the day she was born. It was tradition. It was law. It was said that her face was a gift meant only for her true bondmate. But now time was running out, and still, no one had dared to bond without seeing what was beneath the veil. Inside the glass palace, suitors from different systems stood waiting in the grand hall. Tall, proud aliens dressed in their finest robes, warriors, scholars, princes, all had come to court the princess, but none had accepted the final challenge, to bond without seeing her, one by one. They were sent away. "I will not choose blindly," they said. "I must know her face before I give my future," and so the line grew shorter. The princess sat quietly behind her curtain of silver, her face hidden, her voice quiet, but her heart, it was loud with disappointment. Then came the human. He was not tall like the others. He wore no armor, no gems, just a dark coat and a calm face. He walked into the hall with quiet steps. No fear, no bowing, just a slow nod of respect. "My name is Corin Hale," he said. "From Earth." The nobles scoffed. "A human? A blind fool. He doesn't even know what she looks like." But Corin didn't react. He simply stepped forward and looked up at the veil. "I came to meet the soul, not the surface." Virelia, hidden behind the silk, sat straighter. No one had said that before. Not in all her years. The queen spoke from her throne. "You understand the rule, human? To bond with the royal heir, you must accept her fully, without seeing her, without knowing her face." "I understand," Corin said. "You may ask 3 questions," the queen said. "Use them wisely." Corin nodded, then looked at the veil. Again, "I have only one question," he said. "Princess, what do you love?" The room went silent. Even Virelia did not speak for a long time. Then softly her voice floated through the veil. "I love walking through the silent garden at night, when no one is watching. I love the scent of starflowers. I love words, written in secret places. And," she paused, "I love the idea that someone could love me without needing to see me." Corin smiled. "Then I have no more questions." The queen frowned. "That is not wise. You may regret this." Corin looked at her calmly. "No, I won't." He bowed once, not low, but with respect, then turned to leave. The nobles laughed. He didn't even try. Another failure. Pathetic human. But Virelia? She touched her chest where her heart beat just a little faster. Later that night in her private chamber, Virelia sat in front of her mirror. She still wore the veil, alone, in the dark. But, she whispered to her reflection, he saw more than any of them. Outside, the human waited for her answer. He didn't ask to see her again. He didn't push. He just waited. And somehow that patience was more powerful than any gift she had ever received. She spoke, but he never looked. The royal garden was silent. No guards, no servants. Just the wind brushing through silver-leaf trees and soft blue petals on the ground. In the center of the garden, under a glowing moon lamp, stood Princess Virelia, still veiled, always veiled. Across from her sat Corin Hale, the human. He didn't sit like a knight, or a soldier, or a suitor. He sat like a man who had come to listen. "Why did you come back?" Virelia asked softly. Her voice passed through the thin veil like music. Corin didn't lift his eyes. He sat with his gaze lowered, respectful, not trying to peek, not even once. "To understand you," he said. "If you'll let me." Virelia tilted her head. "So many come to be chosen." "You came to learn?" Corin gave a slow nod. "I don't want a title or land. I want to know who you are, not what you are." She studied him in silence. No twitch, no flicker of greed, no fake compliments. "You could ask to see my face," she said after a long moment. "I could," he said, "but I won't." Why? Because if I fall for your face, I'll never know if I would have fallen for your heart. Virelia felt something in her chest. Strange. Soft. She didn't know what it was. She wasn't sure. She wanted to, not yet. They talked about books, about childhood, about lonely nights in royal towers and broken satellites in Earth's orbit. She told him about her favorite flower, the night bloom, that only opened when no one was watching. He told her about stars he named as a child, ones that didn't even have numbers in Earth's maps. She laughed, not a royal laugh, a real one. He looked up, only to the veil, never beyond it. Your voice changes when you laugh, he said. She blinked. It does? It sounds free. She looked away, her hands folding in her lap. You make me forget I'm hidden, Corin's voice lowered. Maybe that's the real reason for the veil. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? Maybe it's not to protect your face, he said. Maybe it's to reveal your truth, to show who stays even when they can't see. That made her quiet, because no one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her own family. The queen watched from the far palace window. Others had watched the princess like a prize. This one? He listened like she was a story, a slow one, a beautiful one. When the sun finally began to rise, Virelia stood. She hesitated before speaking. I walk here every third moon. Alone. Corin stood too. Then I'll see you in 3 moons. He turned to leave, never once trying to see beneath the veil. After he was gone, she stood still for a long time, then touched the cloth that covered her face, and whispered, What if you already see me better than anyone ever has? The other suitors grew angry. They whispered in the corners of the court, behind silk curtains, inside marble halls. Jealousy spread like fire. Corin Hale, the human, had spoken with Princess Virelia 3 times now. He hadn't once asked to see her face, yet somehow, she smiled more after their walks. Her voice, once cold, now held warmth, and the other suitors noticed. He's tricking her, one noble said, a simple human with no name, no title. What does he offer? Another spat. A mask, the third whispered. He is drawn to what he cannot see. He plays the game, but when it's time to bond, he will run. In private chambers, 3 of the most powerful suitors met. One of them, Lord Treniv, slammed a crystal glass onto the table. I came with starfleets at my back, gifts of gold, rare ores, and she prefers him, a blind human. The others nodded. She's losing reason, one said. We must remind the court who is truly worthy. Later that evening, Corin returned to the garden. Virelia waited beneath the moonlight. He bowed slightly. You kept your promise. So did you, she said. Her voice calm but softer than usual, he noticed. Something wrong? He asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she asked, Do you know what they call you? Corin chuckled. A dreamer? A fool? A ghost chaser? All of that, she said. And worse. He nodded. It's all right. I've been called worse, in more languages than I can count. But it bothers me, she said quietly. Corin turned to her fully. You don't have to defend me, princess. I want to. The wind moved through the leaves. Their silence said more than words ever could. But trouble was already rising. That same night, a sealed report was delivered to the Queen's chamber. The human cannot be trusted, it read. He was seen, speaking with spies near the old gate. A lie. Planted. Poison wrapped in paper. The Queen summoned Virelia. Your human suitor is under question. Virelia stood tall. Then ask me your question, mother. The Queen sighed. He has no title, no protection. If he is cast out, none will defend him. I will, the princess said. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Even if it costs you the crown? Virelia's voice didn't shake. Then I will wear no crown that does not let me choose with my heart. The next morning, Corin was summoned before the High Court. He walked through rows of nobles glaring down at him. He was alone. But his steps didn't slow. He stood at the center. "Speak," the queen said. "Do you deny the charge?" Corin looked around. "I don't need to deny anything," he said, "because the truth doesn't fear your words." The nobles laughed, but the queen did not. Virelia stepped from her seat, walked down the steps, and stood beside him. She asked no one to. "See her?" Corin said, looking at the room. "But I saw her clearer than all of you. She's more than a veil, more than a title. She's a mind, a soul, a fire." He turned to her. "And if that means I'm cast out, so be it. But I won't pretend I didn't see her. I see her every time she speaks." The queen studied them both, then raised her hand. "This court will decide tomorrow," she said. "For now, leave." They obeyed. Together. Outside the court, away from the eyes of others, Virelia turned to Corin. Her hand trembled slightly. "You stood for me." He smiled gently. "You've been standing alone long enough." She reached for his hand and held it tightly. A glimpse that wasn't meant to happen. The storm rolled in quietly. No lightning, no thunder, just a slow, chilled wind that whispered through the royal gardens like a warning. Princess Virelia stood beneath a hanging star lantern, her veil glowing gently in the dim light. She wore no crown tonight. No guards followed. She had left them behind. This meeting wasn't official. It was personal. Corin Hale arrived a few minutes later. His coat was damp with mist, his eyes, as always, respectful, never too low, never too high. Always just enough to show he cared without overstepping. He stopped a few paces from her. "You're early," he said softly. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "Because of the trial?" "No," she said, then paused. "Because of you." They stood in silence, the wind brushing gently between them. Virelia's voice lowered. "Do you ever wonder what I look like?" Corin gave a slow nod. "Of course. Do you imagine beauty? Or something else?" "I imagine truth," he said. "And that's enough for me." She looked away. "Most people imagine power, perfection, or control. You imagine truth." "That's why I'm still here," he replied. The wind picked up suddenly. It slipped past the high garden walls, swirled around the trees, and tugged, hard, at the corner of her veil. Virelia reached too late. A single gust lifted the fabric for half a breath, just a glimpse, her cheek, her lips, part of one bright violet eye. Corin immediately turned away. He spun on his heel, looking toward the fountain, hands raised like a man facing fire. "I didn't mean to," he said quickly. "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't see." "I know." But she wasn't angry. She was quiet. Then she asked softly, "Why did you look away?" Corin's back was still turned. "I didn't want that moment to steal what we've built." She stepped toward him. "You would rather wait than see it early?" He nodded. "Because when you choose to show me, it will be yours, not fate's." Virelia's breath caught. So many had chased her for her face. And this man, he turned from it. Out of respect, she moved closer, now just behind him. "I don't think I've ever met someone who didn't try to own me," she said. "I don't want to own you," he replied. "I just want to walk beside you." She reached out. Her fingers touched his hand. He didn't move, didn't look, just let her be the one to close the space. "I saw your face," she whispered. Corin smiled slightly. "What did I look like?" She laughed quietly. Tired, brave, real. Then she said something she hadn't said to anyone outside her family. "My name isn't just Virelia. It's Virelia Catessan, the one who walks alone. But I think I don't want to walk alone anymore." Corin finally turned. His eyes stayed on hers. but just the veil. Always the veil. And yet, she'd never felt more seen. That night, under the last silver lantern, she didn't fix her veil. She let it hang loose at the edges, almost like an invitation, almost like a promise. The day of choosing. The royal court shimmered in gold. Drums echoed. Silk banners moved gently in the breeze. Thousands of nobles, warriors, and leaders stood waiting under the twin suns. It was the day of choosing. The day the veiled princess would name her bondmate, the one who would rule beside her. But no one knew what was coming, not even the human. Corin Hale stood at the far end of the marble floor. No armor, no royal crest, just a dark tunic, his hands behind his back. The other suitors stood tall in rows, each wearing rich robes, glowing weapons, and pride that filled the air like smoke. They didn't look at Corin, as if pretending he wasn't there would make him disappear. Trumpets sounded. The great doors opened, and Princess Virelia Catessan stepped forward. Her veil was lighter today, woven with threads of moonlight. Her posture was tall, calm. Her voice, when she spoke, was like a soft bell through the silence. I have seen every gift. I have heard every promise. I have felt every gaze. She paused, and none of them saw me. The nobles shifted, murmuring. Her father, the king, narrowed his eyes. But Virelia continued. One suitor came with no army, no gold, no power. She turned her head. And still, he gave me something none of you could. Now all eyes turned. To the human, Corin. Didn't move, didn't blink. Virelia stepped forward. Her veil shimmered with each step. This one did not ask to see my face, he asked to hear my soul. She was standing in front of him now, close enough to touch. She held out her hand, open, waiting. Gasps spread like fire through the room. He's a commoner. He's not even one of us. He never saw her. He doesn't know what he's bonding to. Virelia raised her voice, not loud, but sharp. And yet he stayed. When you all demanded proof, he gave faith. She looked down at Corin's hand, then up at his eyes. I choose him. The king stood. His voice thundered. You risk our laws. The veil must be lifted before bonding. He must see before he touches. Virelia turned to her father and said clearly, then let him touch me with his eyes closed. The court froze. Even the king did not speak. Corin looked at her, then slowly closed his eyes. He reached forward, not rushed, not afraid, and his hand found hers, skin to skin. A spark moved between them, not fire, not magic, just something true. The sacred bond mark on her wrist glowed softly, and on his, it appeared for the first time, burned in by choice, not vision. The bond was accepted, by the system, by the ancient codes, by her. The king sat down heavily. The nobles said nothing, because tradition had been followed, in a way none of them saw coming. Virelia leaned in and whispered to Corin, who still stood with eyes shut. Open them. He did, and saw her face. After the choice. Not before. He closed his eyes and reached for her hand. The hall was silent. The kind of silence that falls before something sacred. Before something true. Princess Virelia Catessan stood tall before her. The court, her veil in her hands, lowered, not ripped. She had lifted it by choice, not because she was forced, not because tradition demanded it, but because she wanted him to see her, and Corin Hale, the human, stood before her. With his eyes closed, not because he feared her face, but because he honored her soul. Take my hand, she said, voice barely above a whisper. He lifted his hand. And in front of thousands of nobles, kings, warriors, and priests, he reached blindly. His fingers brushed hers, and then gently, fully, their hands met. The bond light ignited. Soft at first, a white glow that started where their skin met, then wrapped around them like a slow breath. The court gasped. Some stepped back. Some covered their hearts. It wasn't a power anyone expected. It wasn't from gold or blood. It was from trust. Virelia's voice echoed through the hall. This man reached for me with closed eyes and an open heart. This is the kind of ruler I choose. One who walks beside me, not ahead. One who listens, not just looks. She turned to the court, still holding Corin's hand. I no longer walk alone. The ancient bonding flame above the throne flickered to life, a symbol that had not burned in decades, a sign from the ancestors. The bond was true, even without seeing her face first. The king stood once more, but this time, he did not roar. He looked at his daughter and the human, then bowed his head slightly. Approval, not as a ruler, but as a father. Corin finally opened his eyes and saw her, truly saw her. Not just the face, but everything behind it. Eyes like nebula clouds. A quiet, knowing smile. The same voice. But now with a face that matched its strength. He didn't speak, because no words were worthy. But the way he looked at her said enough. He wasn't surprised, or shocked, or stunned. He looked like a man who had simply waited long enough to see what he already loved. Later that night, away from the throne room and the noise, they stood alone under the stars. Virelia wore no veil. She stood with her arms folded, slightly nervous now that all the eyes were gone. He stepped beside her. You're quieter now, he said gently. She laughed. It's strange. What is? I was never afraid of being unseen, but I didn't realize being seen could be even scarier. Corin nodded. It is, but only when it matters. She turned to him. Was I what you imagined? He smiled softly. No. She raised an eyebrow. He stepped closer. You're better. Her breath caught. She whispered, I still don't know if this world is ready for us. Corin shrugged. Then let's walk through it together and teach it how to be. And she said the words she once swore she'd never say. Then take me, not as your prize, but as your equal. He reached for her hand again, not because it was tradition, but because it was right. When he finally opened his eyes, the veil was gone. The hall had been emptied. The ceremony had ended. But for Corin Hale, the real beginning was now. He stood with Princess Virelia. No, not just a princess anymore. She was his bonded partner. His equal, his flame in the dark. They stood together in the quiet chamber above the gardens. No guards, no audience, no judgment, just them, and the stars above, blinking like silent witnesses. She watched him carefully. Even now, with no veil between them, she still wondered, will he change? Will he treat her differently now that he's seen the face everyone feared to imagine? But he didn't look at her like others had. There was no hunger in his gaze, no shock, no worship, just warmth. The same warmth from that very first garden meeting. Corin stepped closer, slowly, respectfully, and said the first thing that made her smile tonight. Now I finally get to match the voice to the face. She looked away shyly. And he tilted his head. Still not the most beautiful part of you. She blinked. You mean that? I do, he said. I saw your truth before I saw your eyes. I followed your courage before I knew your smile. She reached for his hand again, and he held it like a promise. Later that night, as the stars shifted above the world of Lureva, Virelia and Corin walked through the quiet royal gardens. She wore no veil now. Her people had seen her face for the first time in their lives earlier that day. Some had cried, some had bowed. Many had simply stood still. Not because she was flawless, but because she was free. Now, with Corin at her side, she looked into the reflecting pool. Do you think they'll forget the old ways? She asked. Corin smiled. No. Her shoulders dropped. But then he added, but I think they'll follow you. And that's better. She turned to him, eyes sharp and shining. You're not afraid of this bond. Of what it means. He shook his head. You should know by now. Humans run toward danger when it means something. And I mean something? She asked softly. He leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers. No veil, no question. Always. In that moment, something ancient and powerful shifted in her heart. All her life, people wanted her because they couldn't see her. But Corin? He had wanted her before the reveal, before the beauty, before the approval. That's what made him worthy. Not the courage to face her, but the patience to wait for her and so in front of no one. She kissed him, not as a princess, not as a symbol, just as herself. And he kissed her back, not as a human ambassador, not as a storybook hero, but as a man who had found home in the heart of someone who had always hidden. That night, as the stars turned, stories began, they would say, she chose the only one who never asked for her face, and others would answer, and because of that, he saw more than anyone ever had.